the Israeli military actions after the 27th of December have been totally excessive and disproportionate.
Luxembourg calls on Israel to renounce collective punishment.
Also condemn the disproportionate use of force by the Israeli army.
Israel, in its military operations, does not distinguish between the combatant and the civilians.
As also condemning the excessive, disproportionate use of force.
The disproportionate aggression.
This brutal and disproportionate use of force, Vatican has aptly likened it to a concentration camp.
We are, however, alarmed at the disproportionate and excessive use of force.
In their totality, these constitute war crimes and crimes against humanity.
That violations of international humanitarian law may constitute war crimes.
Hamas is democratically elected and is engaged in legitimate self-defense against the occupiers.
Of Palestinian victims whose lives were taken by Israel in the Holocaust it is perpetrating.
These are crimes which are becoming a new Holocaust.
It was hard for us to see the limbs of our brothers strewn about, their blood streaming in the streets.
I think they should condemn roundly, in the strongest possible terms, the barbarous acts committed against the Palestinian population.
The Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territory since 1967 and its denial of the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination remain the root causes of the problem in the Middle East.
We cannot accept these arguments that the people of Gaza can be pummeled and 219 children killed.
The politico-military elite in Israel, in complicity with the United States and its allies, have been applying a state terrorist policy against the Palestinian people.
It is yet another crime added to the record of an army that kills children.
I give the floor now to a representative of the UN Watch.
Thank you, Mr. President. Much of this session has revolved around a fundamental misconception, one so elementary and yet in recent weeks so pervasive in the United Nations, the media, and influential circles of opinion the world over. The misconception is that in the current war between Hamas and Israel, culpability is to be determined by simply comparing the amount of deaths and casualties on each side and then reaching a verdict. Israel must be the guilty party, goes this logic, because the numbers are so much higher on the Hamas side. Certainly this is the implied argument of the tally provided in the resolution that is before us today. Its tongue-in-cheek tone about Israeli casualties seeks to dismiss the quantity and quality of Israeli suffering from Hamas crimes, choosing to qualify the rockets fired against Israeli civilians as, quote, crude. The terror of 10,000 rockets over 8 years is fully ignored. In the diplomatic world, this guilt by numbers argument finds expression in the frequently heard accusation that Israel is acting, quote, disproportionately, and with its superficial simplicity comparing numbers, and repeated so often, the argument seems to have prevailed. Yet where does one find in international law, in state practice, or in common sense, a rule, precedent, or rationale to support this proposition? The answer, nowhere. The proportionality obligation under international law is completely different. It requires that a military operation be directed at a legitimate military objective and that expected collateral damage not be excessive in relation to the anticipated military objective. In the past 8 years, Hamas and its allies fired 10,000 rockets against the civilians of Israel. Which sovereign country represented here would tolerate such aggression and allow a terrorist group sworn to its destruction to play Russian roulette with its women and children? No one. The truth is that Hamas is committing a double war crime, deliberately targeting Israeli civilians and hiding behind their own Palestinian civilians. Hamas hides their guns and bombs in mosques. They booby-trap schools. They put their terrorist headquarters under hospitals. Read the New York Times. We've seen it. Hamas doesn't commit violations of international humanitarian law. Their entire raison d'etre and modus operandi to murder civilians, to destroy a UN member state, negates the very notion of international humanitarian law. All of this as we're about to celebrate the centennial of Henry Dunant's passing, the founder of the International Red Cross. They, Hamas, and their sponsors bear full responsibilities for the tragic casualties that ensue. They alone have the power to end the hostilities. Mr. President, where was this council while all these attacks happened? What is the credibility of critics who during this time chose silence? Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.